to start with a few questions that I have about the making of the piece, and then I will come out and see what questions you have, and you can ask them of the cast and the creative team. Joe, I'm going to start with you. I have been a fan of Penguin Rep for a long time in your work, as you know. I'm kind of curious about this piece in terms of how I know that you were the one that got the original idea and you brought everybody together. And what were the steps that happened from idea to getting this great team together?
Well, thank you, Linda. And thank you for having us. This theater is beautiful, by the way. You guys have a beautiful space out there. So lovely. Mickey and I were friends for a while. We did the Lady Day together and some other work together up at Penguin and other places in New York. And one evening we were hungry and went to Amsterdam Avenue, as is our wont, to a diner, hanging out and going, oh boy, we're both unemployed, what do we do? And I said, well, Mickey, why don't we develop something specifically for you, something that you're passionate about, something that we could all learn from. And she immediately said, well, Bessie. So I went back and listened to some recordings of Bessie, and I got back to her immediately and said, absolutely not. She's singing the blues. The blues will not translate on stage in a dramatic piece. And Mickey said, you're right, but let me get a hold of the material and let me rearrange with a theatrical sensibility. So what Mickey did was convince me by taking a number of pieces and keeping it true, but just giving it enough of a dramatic punch that really raised my interest, where I came to understand within each song the drama of each song and a chart of each song. So it was very interesting because her collaboration with the original Bessie recordings was what really worked for me. Replicating what someone did years ago and trying to assume that and was not of interest to me, and I think is a foolhardy journey. But discovering what in this lady was remarkable and translating that to the stage was the mission. Our only obstacle was, where do we find someone who could write this book? Because we promised each other that within 8 months we'd do this at the Penguin Theater in Stony Point, Rockland County, near Nyack. We would do it. We slotted it in, and I immediately thought of Angelo Parra. And Angelo had the ability, in my book, historically, to be, he's an amazing researcher, has a great wit about him, and tells comedy truths to the character, through to the character. Let's welcome him. So I called up Angelo and asked him to dive in, and we had a series of meetings at my apartment in the city over a number of weeks. 30, how many drafts? How many drafts?
22.
22 drafts. And was the Earth like supposed to be made in 7 days or something? Wow. But
Shitless studio.
It took us,
right.
It took us 2 years.
2 years to really put it together. And it came to that place where we brought it to Andrew Horn, our producer at the Penguin Rep, and we slotted it in, and we discovered that we might be telling something here that our younger audiences, sometimes you're going to go, I don't want to, who is she? Who is Bessie? And they'll be shocked by her. And it ain't easy to shock our youth, you know that. And truly surprised about her sensibility and learning about her music. And for me, this journey has been amazing, this collaboration. The opportunity to get such wonderful musicians to work with. One is kind of built in. One is a built-in deal, like the refrigerator that comes with the apartment. and that's our Uncle Jimmy, because that's actually Mickey's uncle is right there, Jimmy Hammond.
Thank you. And you said something interesting about not being interested in just replicating somebody else's life and story. And that is what strikes me the most about this piece the first time I saw it, and then even more so tonight. And I have sort of the same question for both of you, but I'll start with you, Angelo. I'm just curious how you set about working on this piece without falling into any of the usual traps of when you tell a true story, just sort of telling the facts, but you made it bigger even than her story and more dramatic, and you weren't bogged down by the truth, if you know what I mean. You were able to make it poetic, and I'm wondering, how did you tackle that, just having her life and her music before you? How did you go about making it something more than a documentary?
Wow, what a question. I did a lot of research. We spent a year working on it together. I did a lot of reading. I listened to the music, and I wanted to tell her story in a truthful way. All the events that are depicted in the play happened. Every word she speaks, I wrote. So it was sort of a blend between my imagination and what really happened, because I want people to leave here feeling like they know a little bit more about Bessie, and I think they do. And it was a fun collaboration. Joe came to me and he asked me if I wanted to get involved in this, and I think I thought about it for about half a second. And I said yes, because I know Joe's work. He and I went down to hear Mickey, she is Bessie. Mickey performing at the Triad Club in New York. And once I heard her sing, I said, let's do this, let's just do this. And we've had fun doing it.
Mickey, I'm also curious, you obviously so clearly got Bessie, but it was so far from an impersonation. It was such an organic performance that had so much of you in it as well. I'm wondering, how did you tackle kind of looking at her body of work and then making it your own in the beautiful way that you did today?
Okay, I think I got my mic still on. My mic's still on. The thing about it, I am a performing entertainer. I used to work in the clubs, and everything that I saw about what Bessie was doing was a part of that. I lived with the musicians, knew how to talk to them, and everything. So it wasn't that far of a stretch, but just trying to just allow myself to be free enough to be as free as Bessie, which is, and I really don't have a problem with that, but I don't do it in public. So, well, sure. Now that I'm older, we have no edit. But it was fun to be able to have the rapport with the musicians, to be able to have the words that Angelo so remarkably put down that just made it live, and the direction that Joe gave to it and the conception, everything just seemed to fall into place. Yeah, we had 22 editions of it before we actually got the first one up, and I think we're on, 37 now? Well, maybe 40, but it was just, it just felt good. It just came. It really just came. But working with a director like Joe Brancato is like a dream, and for me to be able to call him my brother as well is more than a notion. We work well together. We fuss, like everybody else, but we love each other. We want to see both of us move, and then with Angelo in there too, and then great musicians. It was a piece of cake.
The thing about Mickey's background too is that she's an educator. And I think that very often the two overlap or in some way meet, where one who teaches and does the combination is just so wonderfully rewarding, because she teaches not only here but in Japan and knows music. Very often something will happen, a certain lick in the music or something goes on in the music.
Down hard.
And down hard. But anyway, she'll go, wait, that's not in the, as Keith used the term yesterday, in the vocabulary of the period. Like that delicate balance of keeping the vocabulary of the period and yet still doing what I need to do in terms of serving an audience today, making it contemporary enough on some level without damaging the truth of the music. And that ability to play, because Bessie was, with all due respect, Bessie wasn't someone necessarily that I won over for Thanksgiving dinner. She was a handful, as many artists are that we read about and hear about. And sometimes the greater the gift, sometimes the greater the handful. I don't know what that means or how that scans or what that's about. But the reality is that this ability to do a performance where you are dealing with some pretty nasty moments. I mean, that first moment when she comes out on stage and she says, no, that's not good enough for me, I'm walking off. I mean, I had someone in the theater come back to me after he had seen the show. He said, oh, the show is great. He said she was a little pissed off at the top because we weren't good enough, but I'm sure she doesn't do that every night. I'm like, no, that's in the script. That's in the script. Because she does it so convincingly, and I think that unless you do it full-heartedly and commit to it, and trust the fact that you have a story, where can you find a story that at the very top, and very often is placed in 90% white houses, where you could come out and say, excuse me, I don't trust white people. None of my friends are white, and by the end, have that percentage standing up cheering you. To me, the magic of his script is that in 90 minutes, we come to understand a period, 1937, and a sensibility that was there. And we say, okay, I get it. And that kind of thing that happens, because the reason why we stay with a piece like this is because, I mean, they called her in South Florida the Viagra of South Florida, which was funny. But it's sort of like to watch people say at the very beginning, oh my God, she's a little too crass, she's a little too much, I don't know if I should have left the babysitter alone with the kid, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, by the end, standing up and cheering the persona as established by her, of this energy, because as much as you stand up and cheer for Mickey, I do believe that the line has been crossed during the play when you just come to understand this woman, and that achievement is amazing. These three musicians have worked together on this show. We have had opportunities to have other people during the course, but having Keith and Jimmy and Aaron together is an amazing thing on stage. These guys, very much like the other character, you know what I mean? Well, certainly she plays the audience as a character, but then there's that repartee on stage. Could you speak to a little bit about the relationship as musicians to this situation, and how it feels to not be in the pit, but on stage?
I thought this was the pit.
Well, you got a mic on. Your mic is on.
Well, go ahead and talk.
I have nothing else to say.
I've talked.
Well, playing this music, you know, the blues is profound. It's the language of our souls and the things that we have gone through, that our elders have gone through. So playing this music is, it's a show, but it's real. You know, so that's a great opportunity, and the gift of playing with Miss Bessie Smith, who really was a warrior. She said things, she was strong, she was probably stronger than a lot of men. She would say things, she had that kind of courage and the conviction. So as a musician, I'm honored to take part of that. And I always learn something, like, you know, every night. The script is so beautifully written by Angelo and done so well by Mickey. And, you know, there's so much to learn all the time. There's always little nuggets to get. So it's always a pleasure to play this music.
Yeah, for me, it's really great to play this period, because not often we get a chance to play. I get to play clarinet like that, or play in that 1930s style. So for me, I just have a blast to try to capture the essence of the period. So it's always great working with Mickey and the whole cast here, but trying to stay truthful to the period is
How is it like listening to a woman at every moment in the musical direction?
it's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. I like women.
Yeah.
Take a little time to see if any of you have questions. I just want to grab one more mic backstage so that we have one up here and one for you. So one more.
While she's doing the technical stuff, I want to let you know the contribution this man has made to the play. It's fairly easy to understand what an actor does and what a writer does, but maybe not so much what a director does. And I'll give you a great example. That wonderful scene that everybody remembers. What scene am I talking about? The dancing with the saxophone. That wonderful scene. If people don't remember anything else about the play, they remember that scene. I did not write that scene. He created that scene. Mickey Braden and the musicians we were in rehearsal, and he started to play with them, fool around, relax, do something funny, and that became the moment that you saw in the play. That's what a great director, could bring to a project.
Last question from anybody?
Joe, at the beginning, I was a little surprised that you said that you didn't think that people would relate to Bessie as she would have been from her life, actually straight up, so to speak. And I was surprised because I thought people would be interested.
Oh, okay, perhaps I should make that clear. It wasn't that I thought that people would be interested in Bessie, but you have to determine, because so many projects come your way, you have to determine what would be theatrically viable. In other words, what would keep an audience for 90 minutes sitting in a chair and watching this experience? So my only knowledge of Bessie, not her life that was written, were the songs. And the songs, if you go back and you listen to the recordings of Bessie, they're amazing for the period. They're wonderful. They're blues. They have a redundancy to them. They linger on some heartbreaking situations that I felt repeatedly through a show could be this way. So Mickey said, allow me to show you how we could inject some theatrical liberties within it and create. So when she reorchestrated or rearranged the music, I was like, oh, I get the drama, because each song has to move you to the next. There are 1 or 2 songs that we call throwaways in the show, which she throws in, But many of them relate to her own story and come out of the situation. The first number is an original that was written by Mickey and me. We wanted something original just for her to feel the freshness of herself and the freshness of the piece. And then a later song, like the Devil's, the song to the Devil, she wrote that. There is I think that the reason why it can live and I can watch it so many times is because I do feel that there's a newness, and yet still, hopefully, we are serving the legend, and we are serving the legend of Bessie well. Bessie was left without a tombstone until Janis Joplin bought her a tombstone. I mean, people used to walk over her land, and then it became a grave site with Janis Joplin. And so, the fact that we are doing this and that there is some stories to be told about her is really, really thrilling. So hopefully that made it clear to me, and I was able to take the step with these 2 guys to make it happen. But it wasn't something, and usually I try to personally get involved with projects that I don't know anything about. When I did Cobb, with Kevin Spacey's production of Cobb, I don't know anything about bass. I lived in the Bronx, but I went once to Yankee Stadium. To me, if you don't, as a director, if you don't know anything about the material, that's the best way to go in, because you'll ask thousands of questions. And then the playwright will answer it, the leading lady will answer it, the musicians will answer it, and you'll say, oh, make that clearer. And when it becomes clearer, hopefully then you have a production. At least that's where I stand with it.
You certainly had a production.